to This Is. The 2000s was a golden age of tech and tech paraphernalia. And we're gonna go over what was the best and what was the worst. We have our lovely tier list here, and we have it ranked S to F. The legendary Sabras. All right? As always, our rules are, there can only be a single S tier.
Only one.
Only one.
Matt, I think you drank a little bit too much Red Bull before this video, so we're gonna begin with TiVo.
TiVo!
So I gotta be real with you, I never had TiVo because I didn't have cable through most of the 2000s.
Okay, but like the people who had TiVo.
So cool. Can you describe to the youth what TiVo was and why it was the shiznit?
I can sum it up in two very, very cohesive, very clear ways.
Okay. TiVo was the ability for you to record TV and watch it on demand.
It was DVR.
Exactly. But here's the thing. While you might have clicked on this video 3 hours after it went live instead of watching it live as we recorded it, well, guess what? That's the difference between watching TV before and after TiVo. Do you remember the days where you had to be in front of the TV at 7 p.m. on Tuesday night? There were a ton of lawsuits, I remember, a lot of drama around TiVo because basically the cable companies and all these people were like, hey, maybe don't record our stuff.
It allowed you to skip commercials.
Oh, yeah,
that was the whole thing.
TiVo wasn't technically the first DVR, but they were like the big popular one. I used to tape shows, or at least I used to have before they burned in a fire. But where do we rank TiVo? Because it's like,
dude,
I don't have super strong feelings on it because again, I was poor and didn't have cable.
TiVo was really expensive. Couple $100 for the device, and I do want to say it was a monthly subscription. I'm gonna give it a B.
That's pretty strong. You're going B out the gate?
It was pretty great. It laid the foundation for what every DVR is now, and that's a pretty standard feature.
I'm a little bit afraid of where we're gonna go next. I feel like the 2000s was a dichotomy of beautiful and ugly. Thank you to Turo for sponsoring today's video. Check out this sick Porsche 911 that we're renting from Turo. Pretty cool, right?
Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. Here's how it works. A diverse community of hosts all over the world rent out their cars on the app to guests like you and me.
That means that the selection is top notch. You get to choose the exact car that you want with over 1,400 makes and models. What I love about Turo is a great way to try cars that you wouldn't find in a normal rental lot. It also means you don't have to be Austin Evans to pull up in a Porsche, baby.
And let me tell you, it was super easy to pick out and book this rental. Not only could you pick it up and drop it off at hundreds of airports and other locations, you can also have it delivered to wherever you're staying.
Don't you love Turo, Matt? It's such a wide selection of vehicles that you could choose from.
It was super easy to come pick this up. We were able to just come and grab the keys. Check out the link in the description or the QR code on screen. And huge thank you to Turo for sponsoring this video.
And most importantly, making us look cool in our convertible.
Whoa!
You're making it very dramatic. We're doing the speed limit right now, my dude.
But we're going from 0 to speed limit very quickly.
All right, let me pick one. Okay. The Blackberry. So this was created by Dennis from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
This was a smart device that had not only a full keyboard, a lot of them had a full color display.
A little upset that Kinsey didn't get one with the ball. She got one with the touch pad.
I think this is a 2010s Blackberry.
Kinsey, we're gonna have to talk about your work ethic over here.
I had to fight that printer tooth and nail. I really don't want to hear it.
Yeah, it sounds like I had to help because I had to get up.
You literally didn't help at all.
Blackberry was cool because this is a way for you to do all the things we do on a regular basis, but mobily in the 2000s.
Let me talk about how dating worked in the 2000s.
Please illuminate us.
There were 3 options.
Yeah.
You had Verizon.
Yep.
You had Singular.
Yep.
Or you had Blackberry. You couldn't text people
Blue
past 9 p.m.
But aggressive. Yeah.
All right? Because it would cost too much money. But like then they started offering, texting is free between Verizon customers. Listen here, Sally Sue. I really like you, but unfortunately, you have Verizon and I'm a Singular boy. Me and Sally Sue could have been married. I could have had the nice family, but we were on different plans.
Wow. Just
Blackberry
a true tragedy of the
bridged that gap by making it even more complicated and had Blackberry messaging.
But how do we judge this, right? Because you judge TiVo pretty high, and obviously TiVo doesn't really exist anymore. Are we judging it based on just the impact it pushed the smartphone industry forward? You don't get an Android phone without Blackberry existing, like for sure.
But here's the thing, Blackberry was really expensive.
It was really expensive. And Sally Sue never followed through.
He doesn't know another thing that rhymes with
through or through.
Yeah. I'm going to give this a B as well.
Next up, we have the iMac G4. The 2000s was really a renaissance for Apple. At the end of the 90s, Steve Jobs came back, they threw out most of the market and most of the products that Apple was making, and him as well as good old Sir Jonathan Ives decided to redesign what computers should look like. And we had a huge amount of incredibly important devices, such as the iMac G3, the iBook G3. There were a lot of huge sort of things that had changed.
But
yeah,
you couldn't tell me the designers at Apple weren't doing a ton of.
But what if like the screen like pivots and like swivels and it's like on a base? Oh, and then it looks like a flower pot.
You know the lamp from Pixar? What if we made that a computer?
Oh, let's go. The only thing I can ding this for is that while this is an era of like the iMac and the iPod and all these things, the iMac G4, while I think it's an incredibly cool design, it was actually a little goofy. The fact that it had like the articulating arm and it like brought some smiles and happiness. But the thing is, it replaced the iMac G3. But I would argue that the iMac G3 was not only more culturally important, but also was just way more visually interesting. This is cool, but they ditched this design and went for like the regular iMac a couple years later. These only existed for a few years, and they weren't that successful. I would actually say,
okay.
C?
Okay, I'll give you. I thought you were gonna go with D.
No, it's not that bad. I think
it's
some
C
things
for cool.
Nailed it.
The Game Boy Advance SP.
Let's go!
I told Kinsey to put in here because I knew that Austin would be annoying about it.
Back in the 2000s, we had the Game Boy Advance, which was a lovely upgrade that brought Super Nintendo style graphics to a handheld. But it still had a lot of Game Boy problems. It had AA batteries. It had a non-backlit display. Well, the SP fixed both of these, and it had a cool clamshell design. You could actually buy and use a Game Boy Advance SP today very reasonably. This was like the ultimate Game Boy because it played all the old Game Boy games. The only thing you lost was the headphone jack. When they announced the SP, I talked mad shit about it to my friends. Because at the time, I had built the ultimate Game Boy with like the worm light, and I had like the rechargeable battery pack, and I had like a handles with like speakers. Like
these are all things that you all take for granted. You'd be driving in the back of the car, you put the overhead light on, and your dad would be like, I can't see anything. We're gonna crash. Don't you dare put it in S.
S for SP. I will accept nothing less than A, and I feel like I am compromising big time to give you
I will give you A. I'm not giving you S. Always remember that I made you compromise your values for that.
What are you gonna make us put in S then? Oh, I'm very afraid. Well, I'm gonna start with the PlayStation Triple. I think there's a real argument to be made that the PlayStation 3 was the most ambitious game console of all time. Sony lost unbelievably large piles of money on these things. They were incredibly expensive. We've actually done an entire, very in-depth video talking about the history of the PS3. It's really fascinating. Even though Sony absolutely crushed it with the PS1 and the PS2, the PS3 alone almost bankrupted not PlayStation, but Sony as a whole. The biggest knock against the PS3 was that it did so ambitiously almost ruin Sony, and because it's so complicated, a lot of games actually just looked better on the Xbox 360 for at least the first half of the generation.
I traded 80 gig iPod video.
Okay.
For a PS3.
That is a great trade. You came out ahead on that.
I didn't have any games for it.
Yeah.
But because I did that because I wanted a Blu-ray player. More importantly, it had built-in Wi-Fi.
Yep.
And free online.
Yep.
I used my PS3 as my Netflix streaming machine.
It just depends on how charitable you want to be for either A, Sony being unbelievably ambitious and almost blowing up the company, or B, they were unbelievably ambitious and almost blew up the company. But then the Super Slim, which ruined everything.
Yeah. You want to give it an F? Austin Evans.
No, B.
You're going to get your gamer card taken away.
I got to figure out where it is in this sort of realm.
All right, let's give it a B.
All right, we'll give it the
Let's
B.
give it a B.
Next up, we have the Segway. There's a lot to say about the Segway.
We're going to segue that right off a cliff because that's what you did.
And that's unfortunately what happened to the founder of Segway.
We got to do an F, right? Like, this has to be an F.
Wait, we gotta describe. Okay, before hoverboards were all the rage in 2016.
Do you look like me and don't want to use your legs for any of that pesky moving?
Are you an aspiring mall cop and want to cover more ground in less time? Well, boy, have I got the invention for you. And it was a cool idea, right? Like, again, we don't have hoverboards without these, but I feel like hoverboards would be on this for the 2010s tech.
They blew up and then would throw you into a wall.
We once did a hoverboard race and it was really, really fun, and I won. We were about to move into an office before we ended up moving to this one, and Segway US actually took over that office. So we almost could have been neighbors with Segway.
There was a possum in the water main for that place.
Look, I will give you the Segway as F tier. All right, your turn. We got a lot of good ones here.
Windows
bloom, bloom,
XP.
bloom, bloom. Bliss is still the best background wallpaper of any version of any operating system ever.
It's still his wallpaper currently.
It is still actually my wallpaper. It actually is.
What Windows XP avatar is your favorite?
Just dude. I think it was a Pawn? XP really moved things on from the very old school, kludgy, gross looking Windows 95 to a beautiful Bliss background.
Windows XP.
Absolutely goated. Absolutely goated.
It's up there,
It's the best version of Windows. And I think it's helped a lot by the fact that Microsoft tried to move on and make another version of Windows in the mid-2000s, which ultimately did not come together. And it was, I think, 6 years of Windows XP being the only version of Windows, or like the main version. Windows XP was an absolutely terrific OS. It shipped for years after Vista came out because there's like netbooks and stuff that couldn't run Vista.
My
terrific
father, he is still using a Windows XP netbook to this day.
This is S tier. What is gonna be? I don't know what else is coming. I haven't like snuck a peek. What is gonna beat Windows XP?
I will grant you S tier on the condition that we might take it down.
Why?
Because I don't know what's coming next.
But okay, think about just before knowing anything else. Audience at home, what could possibly be better than Windows XP?
Vista.
I'm a Vista apologist, and even I wouldn't say that. I'm feeling good right now. We just got a whole.
My lizard. Whee! Whee! Do you want to ruin a bunch of your friends' TVs?
Yeah, you did that.
I only did it twice.
Twice? It's 2 times too many. One of the most successful Nintendo consoles of all time. The Wii was basically just a GameCube. So while all the other consoles of this era moved to HD, Nintendo goes, well, what if we just put the Wii in a smaller thing and gave it motion controls? And it was massively successful, right? Like the Wii outsold the GameCube a bajillion to 1. But I would argue it put Nintendo on a little bit of a weird path. They've never actually gotten back to true competition with everyone else, which is fine. Nintendo does Nintendo things. What is your thought on the Wii? Because I'm a little bit more negative on this than I think the average person might.
I never owned a Wii personally.
There were a lot of games. 93% of them were garbage, but there were a lot of games.
That's like, yeah, like
Smash Brothers Brawl, still my favorite one. These are all good items besides the Segway. I feel like this part of the board is all good, but this is bad. It was just a GameCube with some motion controllers. C tier.
C tier.
It's worse than PS3 by a lot.
Finally, someone else is gonna get yelled at for their Nintendo hate.
Hey Matt, you're up.
Didn't I just do that one?
The Moto Razor. Ooh.
Okay.
No, where does this go?
This is where I thought. Everyone in this comment who used a flip phone at some point in their life used a Moto Razor. And then they upgraded to an LG Chocolate.
The Moto Razor was a revolutionary device. It really was the iPhone before the iPhone. It was thin, it was well designed, it had a camera. I don't have that hardcore nostalgia because again, I was poor and I didn't have one.
No. You can't even pull the port card out on this
What?
because they gave these away for free.
I didn't have a cell phone. It's certainly influential, certainly on the top tier. I feel like it's a B for me.
I want S.
No, it's not S. It's not as good as Windows XP. I could give you A. I could compromise on A.
I'm gonna cut you with this razor.
Let me see what you have.
No!
Are you gonna do one or?
Xbox 360. This one's
Good.
always
This is a
tough
good one.
because Xbox 360 had 20 variants.
There was the launch version, which red ringed itself a lot.
I'll give it a C.
But then there was the Jasper update, which just didn't red ring anymore.
A B.
Then there was the Slim. And then you had the E, which came out at the very end and no one remembers that.
F. But you also had the Arcade, the Elite, which was A.
The Xbox 360 was the best Xbox of all time. Yes, Red Ring of Death sucked, but it was still the best place to play. It was way cheaper than the PS3.
Halo.
I would say this is a hardcore A, easy.
My first 360, my only 360.
Yeah.
Was an arcade. It was when I was working at Radio Shack. We started selling Xboxes. Completely failed endeavor. No one went to Radio Shack for a console. I got it for like $50.
Next up we have portable GPS.
This was my heyday at Radio Shack because I sold
Get your commission now.
so many of these things.
Yeah.
So it'd be like a TomTom 410. 410 was the basic.
Yep.
And then there'd be a 410T. And then a 410M. And T stood for traffic updates. And then M stood for maps. I'm selling these in a rural area.
Yeah.
that's actively developing a suburban area. So people would come in, buy them, and be like, my street's not on here.
Oh no.
Because the maps, like this.
They're always behind, yeah.
But
here's the thing. This is before smartphones really were a thing. This is before Google Maps was there.
You had MapQuest.
MapQuest or a dang paper map.
Everyone here knows that I helped develop Android.
We do know that.
Yeah. If you look at my Wikipedia page, it says that very clearly.
It does. That's exactly what it says.
I don't think Android would have taken off nearly as much as it did if they didn't make the conscious decision to include GPS in all their phones.
Hey Meta, did the first iPhone ship with GPS?
The original iPhone, released in 2007, did not have
GPS. Dang it. I still think it's a D tier though.
That's what I'm saying. Like, these things suck.
These things suck.
Yeah, like, these things suck.
Next up we have the PSP, famously known as a really good GPS player.
The day we went and got my first HD TV,
Yep.
we went to BJ's, not the burger place. I put my seat down,
Yep.
and it crushed my PSP.
Wow, that's really sad. Anyway, the PSP was the greatest handheld that Sony's ever made, which now hired because they didn't make that many and it's better than Vita. This thing was way ahead of its time. You know, it was very much similar to something like a PS2, except in a portable form.
But it also had shitty games. I've said this a lot.
Yep.
I'm gonna say it again, and I'm gonna piss everyone off. The PSP is only great because you homebrewed and modded it.
I actually disagree. I never homebrewed my old PSP. It was really solid.
It was good. It wasn't great. You had to buy proprietary memory for it, which cost $1 bajillion.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, UMDs though. I think PSP, strong B.
I'll give you strong B.
Right? I feel like, it's maybe not quite A, but it's really good.
Some guys can be like, I like to play Persona 3 on there. It's clearly S tier.
No, you just like looking at anime butts.
You're pandering to someone.
Bluetooth headphones.
Go ahead, Matt. I bet you sold a lot of these at Radio Shack.
Do you want to look like a douchebag all the time while still being able to be in contact? I'm glad you got one that's to scale, Kinsey. I still use my AirPods like this.
The Bluetooth headset, it was cool, but compared to everything else on this list, I definitely feel like we're in like D tier.
I'll give it the D.
Next we have, oh good lord, this is the Dell Axum, aka one of the Windows Pocket PCs. You know all the good stuff we said about Windows XP? Imagine it being shittier.
So this here was my first smart device. You talk about Palm. Palm Schmom. The Dell Axum. I believe the A5. This was full Windows Pocket Edition. It came with Word, Excel, PowerPoint.
Don't use the words full and Windows back to back, because this is not full Windows.
I once wrote an entire 3-page term paper on this with a stylus. I had a dock that would just whoop right onto there. This thing ruled, and everything that you guys ask for in a smartphone, this had back in in 2004. This is A.
Okay. I'm like, I mean, I don't care. You put this wherever you want, as long as it's not S.
It's A, but it's sneaking into S. It
feel like
was so ahead of its time, and the screen was amazing. I want you to do this one next because of that.
Oh, the good old Zune. It's hard to talk about Zune without talking about iPod. This really redefined what Apple was. And Microsoft, as always, wanted a piece of the pie. So they cloned the iPod and made the Zune.
I would say the Zune was better in every way.
It didn't have iTunes though. And honestly, that was where you got all your music. And the fact that you could squirt with your Zune, you could squirt your songs you could squirt on your friends from song to song. I mean, it's also the company who calls their browser Edge. So if I'm just judging this based on 2000's Zune, like D.
What are you talking about?
The Zune was nowhere near as important. Yes,
no, but it was better.
But barely, and no one cared.
Zune Tattoo Guy is gonna come over and smack you in the face.
We met him at Micro Center. Were you there?
No.
It was at a Micro Center somewhere. Maybe it was like Charlotte or something. I literally met the dude. He goes, hey, I know you talked about me once on This Is. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he showed me the Zune tattoo. I was like, holy fucking shit, brother. Shout out Zune Tattoo Guy. But sorry, this goes in D.
Dude, that goes in C at worst.
All right, I'll be fair.
All right.
It's all you, my dude.
The iPod.
So here's the thing, the iPod was a better Zune, but because the iPod took what was a goofy idea of MP3 players, they're big, plastic, chunky, and they made them sleek and cool, and the marketing was incredible.
But then there was the iPod Shuffle.
I would not be a YouTuber without the iPod Touch.
Okay, so maybe you're rose-colored glasses right now?
No, dude, there's so much good with the iPod. If you ask someone today, what's your favorite tech from the 2000s? I would wager more people say iPod than anything else.
So I'm gonna verbally trap you now. Consider yourself verbally trapped.
Oh,
You can't get out.
No.
I said that I traded my iPod for a PS3. You gave a PS3 a B, which means by the transitive properties, you have to give this a C because you said it was a good move to get rid of this.
Fine, give it C.
Yeah.
I'm not even arguing this.
I don't make the rules, guys.
You actually are making the rule right now.
He said it.
Next up we have Netflix, but specifically DVD rental. I signed up on the very last day of Netflix's DVD rental, which was like 2 years ago. So I still have downstairs a couple of unopened envelopes of Netflix DVDs I'm gonna save for a time capsule in 20 years.
Hardest thing about Netflix is that sometimes you would have to create multiple accounts because they would only let you get 3 movies at a time. But if you wanted to binge through all of Lost in a weekend, you had to have multiple accounts to get all the discs.
I never had Netflix DVD rental back in the day because a guy at my dad's work just burned us DVDs and sold them for $5 each.
So the thing that you didn't have with this was late fees.
That is true.
Blockbuster's like, oh yeah, we charged you $98 for this. Back in the day when Matt was a
Yikes.
little sexy boy. One of my moves would be to, hey girl, you want to go to Blockbuster and let's go pick out a movie together. Don't get something too sugary because you're sweet on your own.
I actually feel queasy.
The death of Blockbuster is probably the last time that I was heavy in the dating game.
You know what? I see why that may be wound down. D tier, right? Next up we have the Nokia Engage.
Woo!
Man,
Did
this
your
is gonna be
cell
tough.
phone have unprotected sex with a Game Boy?
We're censoring that. That is never gonna go on air. Yeah, you don't get to talk anymore.
You can't
I
hear
take
me
over.
anymore.
There we go. Perfect. The Engage was essentially much more akin to a real game console. You didn't just download the games. You actually bought physical carts you would put in it. The problem is that it was a horrible phone. You had to talk into it like a taco. No one bought the games for it. I'm sad to say this is actually F tier. It was cool, but it was such a massive flop. If you bought one of these things, you had a terrible phone that didn't play any games.
Also, it was like Game Boy Advance graphics.
Windows Vista, baby! Windows Vista was troubled, I will say, especially in the early days. When it first launched, it was kind of bad. It ran like absolute dog doo-doo on most people's computers. It also was incredibly difficult to get drivers to work. So like your printer and all kind of things, it just wouldn't work. After like a couple of years of updates, computers started actually having a little bit more performance. When you turn on all the Aero bits, I would still wager that Windows era, that Frutiger Aero sort of look, I think still looks nice. The transparency, I have hardcore nostalgia for Vista. And yes, you could just say that Windows 7 was just Vista, but not bad. And I would agree with that. But I think that people have way too much hatred for Vista. I actually want to say, I want to give it a C.
I have no frame of reference. I never once used it.
I realize I'm putting it in the same category as the Wii and the iPod. Okay, maybe D. We'll give it
Yeah.
D. We'll give it D.
Yeah.
It was not that bad though, just not as good as XP. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, ring-a-ling the ding-ling, and let us know what you would rank as the S tier of S-ness of the 2000s tech. I would say Windows XP is a clear answer, but if you have something better, you can let us know in the comments below. And before you ask, no, we are not going to be releasing the uncensored Mac cut for this episode.
Can we talk about how much Voldemort was like reliant on magic? He tried to kill a baby with a killing curse. You know how fragile babies are? All he had to do, pick up the baby and just go, whoops.